Around the world, as promised, a remnant remains, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Welcome to Remnant Podcast.
All right, welcome back to Logos Life. That's a episode that we do each week on the Remnant Podcast.
Yep.
And you usually pick topics and bring them to the table, and I'm kind of in the passenger seat on it, but I really enjoy that. I kind of thrive in that. And this week, well, you've picked something it's huge.
I mean, I put a lot of hours into this one, and I don't even think I scratched the surface on it. To be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, tell us what it's about. What are we going to be talking about today?
Today, we're going to be talking about pride. And the title, I come up with this, and it fits perfect, I think. God hates pride. Because the Bible tells you that.
Yes.
In fact, there's a lot about pride in Proverbs. Well, Proverbs 6, 16 through 19. These 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to the evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren.
So the pride in that passage is a proud look.
Yep.
A proud look. And honestly, everybody hates pride except when it's their pride.
Exactly.
But everybody hates to see pride on somebody else.
Yep.
Everybody hates to see a man that's full of himself, or a woman that thinks she's God's gift to the planet. Or I think about it with singing sometimes. I would rather hear somebody, let's just say they're going to get up and sing in front of a church. I would rather hear somebody get up there and be so nervous that their voice is quivering and they make mistakes, but they're sincere, than to hear somebody get up there who thinks that they're just the best singer ever and they're just going to rock it out. And that's like, no, I don't even care nothing about hearing that,
No. It's, I cover that in here. And of course there's a difference in pride, because it's okay to be proud of your kids.
Yeah, there's a good pride. There's a good righteous pride, we could call it.
Yeah.
Because even God has a righteous pride.
Yes.
This is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. In other words, I'm proud of my boy.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not the kind of pride we're talking about. That's something totally different. Most people don't even call that pride, really. It's like, you do use the word proud, but it's more of like a thankfulness, a gratitude. Right. It's like, I'm proud of that person. It's not pride of me or whatever.
But someone who's not versed in pride will make that mistake. And I read a letter. It was a letter that was published on a biblical, you ask questions about the Bible and they answer. Mm-hmm. And the woman was told, or the woman's son scored a goal in a soccer game. And she said, I'm so proud of him. And the person sitting next to her said, that's a sin. You can't be proud of him. No,
that's not a sin.
Exactly. And then when that person answered her, because she was like, is this a sin? Is this true? And then the I don't know if I think he was a preacher. He lined it all out. He said, what you being proud of your son was nowhere near a sin. And he broke it all down. Mm-hmm. And I took a little bit from his letter, because it was almost like a teaching. Like until you've read the first part and then all the way through, you're like, wow, this was just a letter advice that this guy wrote to that woman. And it almost was like it was a teaching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll get started. It says, okay, so God hates pride. And if you're a child of God, you should also hate pride. And in this episode, I hope to show everyone how bad pride is. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I did not realize how bad pride was until I started reading on it a few weeks ago. See, this was something I actually started reading for myself, just pick a topic and read on it. And then when I realized how dangerous pride was and how much God hates pride and how much people may be acting proud and not even realize it, because pride has different faces, just like anything, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead.
So that's when I wanted to bring it here, because I thought, you know what? If I didn't know this, a person, I'm gonna say, a person young in the word may not know this. Then again, they might. But even there might be some people who have been in the word their whole lives and don't realize. I don't know. And that's why I really wanted to bring it to the table today. I can understand, after reading and studying this, why God hates pride. Being a prideful person is bad for you and the people in your life. So let's get into it. Pride is an easy vice to see in other people, but harder to see in yourselves. But you were already saying that right before. You know, you may know you have it, but to you it may not be pride. You know, even though it is.
Yes, pride is by far the sneakiest,
yes,
and most blinding of all of the sins that we do and have in us. Yeah, pride blinds people to the fact that it's pride, and also pride disguises itself as everything but pride. It's like it don't want to be labeled pride.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like pride will even at times put on I'm giving pride a personality here,
right.
Just speaking allegorically, but pride will wear a costume that says humble. It'll disguise itself as humility, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm an humble person. It's like, oh wait, that's pride. It's like pride got you there. It's very, very sneaky.
So when I say this, I'm talking about some traits are easier to hide from others, because an adulterous trait, if you are very careful, you can hide that from people. Mm-hmm. People will never know. And there's several others that I was going to write down and I didn't write down, because like I said, there's just so much, and I was honestly trying to keep this within an hour, but it may be longer than that, and this may end up being 2 episodes. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
If you've ever been around someone with the ugly trait of pride, you despise its presence in them, but we will defend its presence in us by denying its presence in us. So we're denying it, and that's how we are disguising it, because we don't want to think. You don't want to think of yourself as that prideful of a person.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll try to deny it.
One thing that I think should be said right up front here is that every single human being on the planet has pride.
Oh yeah,
well, every one of us.
It's because we're human.
Yes.
Yes.
And so it's to say you don't have any pride. That's a mistake right off the bat. That's what pride would say, is I don't have any pride.
Right.
But so we're not even saying, that we have overcome pride or anything. We all have it. But the thing is identifying it and getting rid of as much of it as you can.
Yes.
Is probably what you're going to be talking about for the rest of the time.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So, God has a special disgust for pride. No vice is more opposed to God. God hates pride because it is a manifestation of the deepest depravity, the root cause of most forms of sin.
I agree. Like, let's unpack that for a minute.
Yeah.
Pride is the number one cause of unbelief, or a person who won't trust in Christ or come to know salvation or whatever through faith in Christ. The number one reason is pride.
Yep.
It may not seem that way, but in their minds, it's like either they don't need a savior,
Yep,
which is pride, or they don't believe that this is logically possible, which is pride in another sense, thinking that they know what is and what is not the world that they live in, even though God created it. In other words, thinking they have a better understanding of logic in the universe than God does. That's pride.
Yep.
Atheism, the sin of atheism, so to speak, is pride. Now, I'm sure you have it in here where John says that which was from the beginning, or says the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Did you put those verses in here or
I
not?
didn't put it. No, I've got lists of, and this ain't the only list. This is just like the top.
Right.
Whatever I've read so much, and trying to get it all together was.
Well, when he says the lust of the flesh, he says something, that which was in the world from the beginning. I can't remember how he words it, but he says the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And what he's talking about is Eve.
Yep.
When she said, it is good for food, that was lust of the flesh. That she's being tempted to take of this tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yep.
And she says, it's good for food, so that's lust of the flesh. She said it's pleasant to the eyes, that's lust of the eyes. But then she said, this is where the pride of life came in. She said, and it's desirable to make one wise. She desired, in her mind, something that would make her better than everybody else in the world at that time, which was really just Adam. But she's like, oh, I want this because I want to be smarter. I want to be wiser. I want to be. Yeah. It was a pride-filled desire.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So even the pursuit of riches can be prideful.
Yep.
You know, it's like, actually, it's not even necessarily that you need or want the money, but you want the prestige that comes with it, the pride of life. The pride of life is, but the thing is, what I was getting at is, I think ultimately pride was the main factor in the fall of man.
Yes. Yes.
Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay,
I mean, that was in a lot of the. What
okay,
I read
well, go ahead.
too.
I don't want to put the cart before the horse here. Go ahead.
A popular writer, theologian, C.S. Lewis, says, according to Christian teachers, the essential vice, the utmost evil is pride. Unchastity, anger, greed, drunkenness, and all that are mere flea bites in comparison. It was through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind.
I love how he says it all, because I've said very similar things, and it's right. It's really right. It's super right. And one interesting point he makes is that many of the things that people would consider major atrocious sins compared to pride are a flea bite.
Yes.
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's what he said.
Yeah.
Pride is the thing. He's right. Pride is what made. Pride was the sin of Satan, so to speak. Pride is what Satan. That was his fall, as he said, I will do this, that, and the other. I will ascend above the heights of the north. I will set my throne in the clouds. Me.
Absolutely.
You know, so pride says that a lot. Pride is a self-focused thing, and that's what I was thinking about earlier. I don't know about the letter that the guy wrote, but when you was talking about how he began to break it down, an acceptable pride is a pride that does not glorify you in any way, but you're proud of. It's an outward. It's like and for someone else.
Yeah, you're like honoring someone.
Yes, honoring another person. But the unacceptable pride is any pride, whether disguised or plain to see, in some way, is self-glorification. Yep. It's you being, glorifying yourself. Which there's even a self-pride in some sense that would be okay. Like, I'm proud that I made it to where I am in life by the grace of God or whatever.
That's what I was going to say. A lot of that stuff I said, that if you be proud of yourself, but you need to give the recognition to God because He's the one that made it available.
Yeah, which really is more like just the thankfulness, ain't it? It ain't really a pride, it's just the thankfulness in the end. So, yeah, so let's just talk about that a little bit more, though. So he said it was a flea bite compared to the rest. But what was the last line? That was powerful.
Let me see. It was through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind. Pride
leads to every other vice. And it is a complete anti-God state of mind. That's what I was saying. Yeah. The sin of atheism is pride. It's an anti-God state of mind. And it leads to every other vice. Kind of what do you think he's getting at there?
Well, I mean, let's use lust for a example. So your pride can get you in a lot of trouble with any of that stuff. So if you're lusting over somebody, your pride is what's causing you to feel I'm and maybe I'm better than her husband. I am better than her husband. She'll want me. That's a pride thing. And that's also lust. He's lusting, but the pride is what's leading him to the lust.
Pride is definitely involved, even if it's not involved in the scenario that you paint. There's a lot of different scenarios that it could be involved.
That's what I'm saying.
But it is this. I deserve this to fulfill this desire, or I deserve this, or I should have this, or whatever. It's still I thing. It's I want that.
Yep.
And so there's a sense of pride in every sin, nearly. I mean,
yeah.
And it is one of those things. It's like I've heard some testimonies and some stories through the years. It's kind of funny, like people working on humility and to be a servant and stuff. And so they decided to just show up and mow somebody's yard for free because the elderly lady just needed it done. And so they just pull up the truck and trailer and unload the mower, and they mow the yard for free. And then they get done and they look back at the yard and they look at themselves and they just think, I'm just such a good person. It's like you just undone all of your exercise in humility when you begin to praise yourself for something. It's a difficult thing.
Yeah. Well, and like true humility, we may not even know the humility some people got because they don't want it. No, they go and do it. They don't want the recognition for it. They walk away. There's a lot of people out there that do that.
I believe this to be true. I actually think I said it in a sermon about 3 years ago. All the times that you've exercised true humility, you don't know that you did it.
Yeah.
Because if you did know it, it wouldn't have been true humility. Like humility is one of those selfless acts of, it can be a selfless act of kindness, but it's not a conscious thing that you don't realize it because.
Yeah. You don't realize that you did it.
That is because humility, in a sense, is the opposite of pride. Humility will never acknowledge itself. It'll never glorify itself. It'll never boast itself or lift itself up for being humble even. It will go unnoticed, is what I'm saying. It will go unrecognized.
Yep.
You yourself will not really necessarily realize it. Now, there is times where you can intentionally humble yourself down.
Yes.
For some certain thing. But I'm saying most occurrences of when we actually did an humble thing, we didn't even realize it.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I think about with mothers and their babies. You don't think of that as an humbling thing or a thing of humility, but in a way it is. You got a mother who knows 1 trillion times more than that baby.
Yep.
She's way more capable than that baby. She needs sleep, honestly, more than that baby because she's got a job to do to hold down the fort at home or whatever. She cooks and she works and she provides and she does every single thing for that baby. And that baby just wakes up and screams bloody murder in the middle of the night because it wants milk, at 3 a.m. And that mother, we don't think of it as a deep act of humility, selfless act of love. But that's what it is. She gets up and she feeds that baby. And you know what? She don't get mad at it. She doesn't hold it against the baby and say, you thinking little baby, I wish you'd think for yourself. I wish you did. She doesn't even think about it.
No,
she gets up in the middle of the night, dead tired, baby screaming, and she gets up and changes its diaper and feeds it, and she never looks at it like, oh, you get on my nerves. That's one of the most powerful. It's not just selfless acts of love, but that's humility too. She's a fully capable person that's humbling herself down in a sense to do that with no despair. But she don't count it. She doesn't even think about it. You know what I'm saying?
No, but most true mothers, good mothers. They are automatically because they don't think twice about it. They always make sure their kids are fed before they are. They make sure their needs are met before theirs.
And they're not sitting here glorifying themselves like, look at me. I did all this. I put my kid before me at 3 a.m. They don't even acknowledge it because it's humility and it's love.
Yep.
Love and humility go hand in hand. Pride and selfishness go hand in hand.
Yep.
Pride and hate in a sense, but selfishness is really
and it's the complete opposite of.
It's the opposite
humility
of
and love is the complete opposite of pride and selfishness.
Yes.
So, pride is a state of mind, or more essentially, a condition of the heart, in which a person has supplemented the rule of God over his life with the rule of his own will. Instead of depending entirely on God, as was God's design, a proud heart looks to itself to decide what is good and evil.
Yes. Which, that's also connected to what C.S. Lewis had said, or is that still C.S. Lewis? That's C.S. Brazelton.
Well, I honestly, everything, I had so many papers that I read, the Bible I read, and then I put it all together and then added my own thoughts from reading the scripture in some of this, but it is literally like in a blender, so I can't tell you what come from what article and what's mine, what's theirs,
what you was saying is what he was also saying when he said pride is what's at the core of every vice of man. Yep. That's what you're saying there in your own way of wording it, that it leads to, well, I can't remember what it was you just said as we was talking. I kind of lost exactly how you worded it, but read the bottom part again if you don't mind.
Instead of depending.
Oh, yeah. Instead of depending on God.
Depending entirely on God, as was God's design, a proud heart looks to itself to decide what is good and evil.
Which leads to all those vices he's talking about. Proud heart says, I know best. I can do it. I can do it on my own, or I can do it my way, or my way's better than God's way, or God doesn't even exist, and I am my own God, or all these kinds of things. They're pride, man. I'm hoping in the end you got some good advice on how to fight pride, because it's an abundant thing.
I
know we're nowhere near the end. No. I know we're nowhere near the end. But pride is one of those things that it's the most expensive attribute you can have. It costs you a ton. I mean, a ton. I'll confess some times of my life that I have realized my own pride in things is at different times. Well, let's just say go into a restaurant with people. And it's like, because of my own pride and not wanting to look poor or whatever, I'll buy the dinner, and then when we're done, I'll tip like $40.
Yeah.
And it looks outwardly like, oh, it's generous. Nope, it was pride. You know what I mean? You don't think about it in that moment.
Right.
It's not premeditated pride, but it's still pride. Where it's like, I do want to buy dinner for people. And a lot of times I think it's a pure motive, especially with friends and family and stuff, or people who I feel led to, so to speak. But there's been a lot of other times where it's like a pride thing, like, no, I got money, don't you worry about it, I got the money, and it's like, come on, man.
I don't think I wrote it down here in my notes, but, going to that, worrying what you look like to other people is pride. And that's what you just said. The people you went to dinner with,
I'm so guilty of these things at times.
Well, that's why when we're doing this, I'm not preaching on anybody. If anything, it's getting on me probably more than it may get on the audience. But it's just worrying about how you look to other people. Everybody does that.
And it comes from a source of pride. It really does. And some people would never admit that, but it does. It really, really does. To some extent, I guess there's a certain amount of just saying it's, maybe there's a certain amount of caring what you look like that's not completely pride driven. Like what I mean is that you get up and take a shower in the morning and stuff. That's not pride.
No,
you want to be
cleanliness is next to godliness.
Yeah. Actually, that's funny. People, that's a popular phrase, and I have said that many times, but that's actually not in the Bible.
No, it's not, but it's still...
it's a very important thing. But yeah, so there are aspects of... I'm not saying that you have to try and have no thought for anything about you whatsoever, or that's pride. I'm not saying that. But what you said is the best way to word it. When we're concerned about how we look to other people, it's because of our pride. We're so worried of our pride being hurt or being embarrassed or looking stupid or looking poor or looking ugly or looking all kinds of things, and it's a pride-driven thing. And that's why it's so cherished for a lot of people when they do meet someone and they use these words. They'll say something like, I really liked them. Oh, wow, he seemed genuine or sincere. Yep. They like that people's not lifted up with pride and think you're better than me and all that, and, you know, just fluffing yourself up all the time. I'd rather you just be what you are and be truthful and be sincere and be genuine. I'd much rather. And God's the same way. Yeah. You know, God's the same way. Well, carry on, man. You're just tearing me apart here. I got, I got 1,000 examples of pride I could get into.
I'm going to give you some examples of pride.
All right, give them to me.
All right, so pride is a secret fondness to be noticed. Pride is a love of supremacy.
Slow down, because these are big.
Okay.
We don't have to talk about them all, but just read them slow.
Okay.
Pride is a secret fondness or desire to be noticed, to be seen.
Yep.
Carry on.
Pride is a love of supremacy.
Certainly that.
Yeah. I'm not trying to step on too many toes here, but managers at a job, even preachers of big churches.
Preachers of small churches. You have to be careful. I mean, pride is, what did you say, something supremacy?
Yeah, is a love of supremacy.
Love of supremacy. Yeah. Now, that's I'll confess another one. Not with preaching, but I realized in myself another condition of disgusting pride. This was years ago, and I even just say that now so that it doesn't sound as bad. Okay, but I've been self-employed most of my life. Well, pretty much all of my adult life. And I used to take such pride in that. Now, I really try not to. Sometimes I still do. But I found myself in my early 20s saying, somebody would say, where do you work? And I'd be like, I'm self-employed, but I would say it in such a way that's like, I'm better than this question of where do you work. I work for myself. Yep. And then, again, in my early 20s, I'm talking like 23, 24, I made a comment a few times, and they would be like, oh, so-and-so that works down, I'd be like, yeah, he works for me. Oh, it nearly makes me want to throw up my mouth just saying it. And I realized early on, I'm never going to say ever again, this person works for me, because you know what? They don't work for me. They work for themselves. Yep. They're not here for my sake. They're here for their sake and for their family's sake, and they don't work for me. And so it was a disgusting level of pride in me in my early 20s that, looking back on it, it's like you're ashamed of it, man. But it can sneak in, be like, oh, yeah, so-and-so works for me. So I never say that anymore now. I say I work with them or they work with me or whatever. And usually now, if anybody ever asks me where do I work, I just tell them the name of the company. I don't say like I'm self-employed or whatever, because pride, it'll just get you, man. It's sneaky.
It will.
It's like an acid to all things good in you too. Pride will really wreck your world.
Yes, that's why in the beginning when I said it's damaging to you and the people around you, because pride will kill everything around you.
Pride will kill your marriage.
Well, yeah, pride will.
Pride will say, I ain't gonna say I'm sorry. I ain't in the wrong. Nope. You're gonna tell me you're sorry. See that? And even if you're not in the wrong, that's still a pride. Yep. Stubbornness is pride. There's so many things. Yeah, pride will ruin your marriage. Pride will say, I don't owe you an apology. When love says, just mend the fence, man. It's not worth losing even a slice of this good life you could have over your stupid, foolish pride. Humble yourself down. Who cares if you're in the right or wrong at this point? Don't you see this is hurting your marriage? Just forgive and move on, you know. But pride's like, no, I deserve better. Anyway, yeah, pride is just super destructive.
Just studying pride, there's rabbit holes everywhere.
There really is.
I mean,
because it affects every aspect of our life, doesn't it?
It really does.
And the preacher thing too. I know you're about ready to move on, but the preacher thing is a big one, man. And this is one I have to be careful about because I'm a preacher. But I know that one of the most disgusting forms I've seen pride in my whole life is in preachers.
Yeah.
I mean, it just absolutely, when a preacher literally thinks he's better than everybody else out there, literally thinks he's smarter and got a direct line to God or whatever that other people don't have, and especially if you add to it that if he thinks he looks good or if he thinks he's, more well off or whatever, he ends up thinking that they're all there for him.
Yeah.
Not Christ.
Well, and one of the things I read too, this preacher said, and he was ashamed of it now that he did this, but back when he was new to the preaching, and he had a fairly good sized church, but he felt his whole purpose was to grow a bigger church, and he was less worried about the quality of the people and then in your church versus growing it as big as you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying all big churches are, but a lot of these mega churches, that's what their whole thing is. I mean, they could fill a football stadium with the,
They're
that's
proud
what they're
of the numbers.
About.
They're proud of the size of the crowd. They're proud of the building. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know of one that I haven't seen that's lifted up with pride. Like I said, I got to be careful. I'm a preacher too, and it can affect all of us. I will tell the truth. This doesn't make me humble, but this is true. Every single Sunday for 4.5 years, I would bet every single one that I haven't missed one. I get down in here and I pray before I go out there every single time. And what I pray every single time is, Lord, keep me from pride. And sometimes it's like, I think he has answered that prayer. At other times I've had pride. But at times it's like, well, this is how the Lord keeps me from pride. I go out there and I preach my heart out, I feel like, and it's like there's nothing happens. Nothing. And I'm just like, I didn't do, I'm not doing right. I'm not doing good or whatever. Then later I do end up finding out, people was blessed by this or that or whatever. Yeah. But it's like God don't give me the feedback then, because I would end up I would be thinking, man, I'm a pretty good preacher. I'm a pretty good this.
I think it's harder to read a room in a church versus like a stand-up comedy lounge.
Oh, yeah.
When you bombed it.
Oh, yeah.
No one's laughing.
Yeah.
When you hear crickets.
Yeah.
But everybody's supposed to be quiet in church.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. But anyway, it is something to be concerned about. And there's a verse in the Bible that even says that about young preachers, that a man needs to be kind of a certain age, because if he's young, it says he may be lifted up with pride and fall into the condemnation of the devil, which means the same thing the devil was condemned over. And because I was in my 30s whenever I first started preaching, I was really concerned about that for myself, and still am, but I've prayed that a lot. I ain't saying that makes me better, but I mean, it's something to really be concerned about is all I'm saying. It's something to be.
If you're aware it's there, you work on it, and you put the effort into not being proud. I mean, unless you, versus saying, I don't have pride, and saying I don't have pride is a form of pride. Because everybody has pride.
Yeah. All right, hit me with the next one.
So pride is drawing attention to yourself in conversations.
You're right about that.
I'm not, like I said, we're not preaching to anybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is all, pride is enjoying being flattered.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
And desiring it to be bragged on and flattered and complimented. And,
pride is...
Well, let me add to that.
Okay.
I think everybody, to an extent, enjoys being complimented, and that is a form of pride.
Yeah.
But the pride that really kind of gets on everybody is when you desire that. Like, let me say it this way, is when you believe it.
Yeah.
When you're just like, if I'm like, man, you're so good at this, you're so good at that, and you're like, yeah, I am. Yeah. Keep talking. Yeah, I'm all that. That's when it gets to the disgusting level of stuff,
Yeah.
All right, go on.
pride is loving to have your name at the top of the list.
It certainly is.
It really is.
Yeah.
That's why I think a lot of times in sports and schools and stuff, they purposely make the list alphabetical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or they say, this list is in no particular order. So, but.
Yeah. Pride does all that, but pride will also make you pray, altering your voice a little bit, or fluffing your words up a little bit in church to make yourself look more spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Pride, because that's what Jesus is saying when he's talking about the hypocrites, scribes and Pharisees.
Yep.
He says you like to pray loud in the street corners or whatever so that people glorify you, basically, like,
yeah.
So that they say, oh, what a spiritual man. He says you like to sit in the uppermost rooms at the feasts. You like to be at the rich man's table, so to speak.
Yep.
And you wear these fancy garments. And he's saying it's all, every bit of it's pride and it's hypocrisy.
Yep.
It's you're doing all this in the name of, I'm a spirit-filled man. I'm a spiritual man. I'm a godly man. Look at me pray. Look at me preach. Look at me reading my Bible. But what he's saying is it's actually hypocrisy because it's not spirit-filled. It's not true. It's actually pride.
Yep.
Pride will do a lot of things that the it's what I call like the religious voice, where a person gets up there, could be a testimony or whatever, and they're like suddenly altering their voice a little bit to sound like, and I was trying so, it's like they get this, I don't know how to explain it. I'm not saying emotional necessarily, but it's like they start getting this voice as though they're like somehow this was super spiritual and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you just want people, here's my point. They give this testimony or whatever, and what they're hoping to get out of it is that people look at them and be like, oh, you're so spiritual. Oh, you made it. Oh, you did. Yeah. Their testimony glorifies itself, not God. That's what I was trying to get at. All right, go ahead, man.
All right, so the last one on this list, pride is when the praise of men is sweet to your taste.
That's what Jesus said.
Yep.
He said they love the praise of men. They speak with great swelling words, and they love the praise of men rather than of God. And they, as Jude says it, they have men's admiration in view rather than, adoring, pointing people towards God. They point people towards themselves.
Yep.
And, it's a big deal. Go ahead. I don't want to sit here and talk.
So why does God hate pride? In Proverbs 8:13, the fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogance, and the evil way and the perverse mouth I hate. That's Proverbs 8:13. So we understand why God hates pride so deeply. We will hate it too. So here's, I guess, some examples. And let me tell you, there was a lot of them, but for sake of time, I picked out the ones that, I don't know, I guess you'd say the ones I felt were going to be easier to come across, to get across. So God hates pride because of the absolute devastation that comes through it. Proverbs 16:18 teaches that pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Like I said before, Satan was once an angel in heaven until he got proud.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that you're closing down here somewhat or wrapping it up maybe. I don't know. Or maybe you're not.
I think we're close to halfway.
Oh, okay. I was thinking you was closing down. But something that we need to keep in mind as we're talking about this. You can't debate this. You can't water this down.
Mm-mm.
Pride is a sin.
Absolutely.
You can't debate that. If lust is a sin, pride is a sin. Pride is the worst sin in a sense because it covers so many things. What I'm getting at is this is not something that you can listen to and really be like, yeah, well, we all got a certain amount of pride and there's nothing we can do about it. No, you can't have that attitude.
No.
You know what I'm saying? You can't be like, yeah, well, sin, that's whatever. It's my nature. No, you're supposed to squelch pride. You're supposed to suppress pride.
You're supposed to be constantly working on yourself to walk with Jesus.
Right. Well, it says if God hates pride, it wouldn't be right to well, what I was going to ask is, how much is an acceptable amount of unrighteous pride? None.
Right.
None. You may never reach the level of none, but you should be striving for none. I don't want pride. I mean, why did God call Moses? And he's really the second greatest man in all of human history, second to Jesus Christ, because it says he was the meekest man who ever lived.
Yeah.
That's why. Because what Moses was called to do, he had to be a man with no pride.
Yep.
Because pride would have destroyed him. It would have corrupted him, and that's the only reason that's not the only reason, but God will use a man that's humble, but not a man that's got a pride problem, you know.
Right.
Like, I mean, he will to an extent, but God resisteth the proud and giveth grace to the humble. You know, that's what the Bible says. And so my point was just, as we're talking about this, we need to remember that what we're talking about is not just some funny thing that we see in other people sometimes, and every once in a while we see in ourselves. What we're talking about is the nature of sin in the man. That's what we're talking about. It's a very serious thing. Absolutely. And one funny thing that you said, pride cometh before destruction, and a haughty look before the fall, or whatever. I've told my kids that verse a lot, because kids have pride too.
Oh, yeah.
Especially brothers competing. And we got one son in particular who has the worst pride issue. And one day, his pride and thinking he's so good at so many things causes him to show out in front of people, thinking that he'll impress them and they'll praise him. Like, you know, he'll jump a fence or something. You know, he does it all the time. And I kept telling him, because he'd get to showing off and doing stuff like he just, you know, randomly, he's just being a kid, but doing it for pride's sake, you know, doing some kind of backflip in front of everybody or whatever, thinking that they'd all be like, oh, wow, you're awesome. And so one day, we was outside and we had some people here to buy some pigs. A couple of young girls was here about his age. He was probably 9 or 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And he was going to show off in front of them little girls. And he was going to just like run and jump the fence and be funny and all that. And he hung his foot on the fence and face planted in a big pile of pig doo. I mean, just splat, had junk all over his face when he come up. And he was mega embarrassed, you know. And I just said, son, pride came before the fall, didn't it? Mm-hmm. And he was like, yes, sir. Because he was showing off, you know. He was trying to impress him. And so that's a funny little example of that happening, where it literally, if he wouldn't been showing off to get their attention, he wouldn't have fell in pig doo, you know. Anyway, all right.
Yep. So along with this devastation, I'm going to read this real quick. This is just... It kind of comes off like a joke or a story, but it shows you. It says, a minister, a Boy Scout, and a computer expert were the only passengers on a small plane. The pilot said that the plane was going down, but there were only 3 parachutes and 4 people. The pilot added, I should have one of the parachutes because I have a wife and 3 small children. So he took one and jumped. The computer whiz said, I should have one because I am the smartest man in the world and everyone needs me. So he took one and jumped. The minister turned to the Boy Scout and with a sad smile said, you are young and I have lived a rich life. So you take the last parachute and I'll go down with the plane. The Boy Scout said, relax, Reverend. There are still 2 parachutes left. The smartest man in the world just picked up my knapsack and jumped out.
Yeah.
Pride got...
That's how it is. Yeah, man. Pride, you know, it's... Even in a sense, I wonder... Well, I guess, you know, you never know. The minister himself would know, but... If there would have only been 3 parachutes and he gave one of them to the young boy and then he's going down with the plane, you wonder if in those last seconds or 2, if he wouldn't have been like, I'm such a good man. You know, you never know, but there's a a way to feel okay with yourself or whatever. But that, I don't know. That is a funny story though.
Yeah,
because that's the truth. That's how people are.
Is.
They think I deserve something because people need me, or people, the world's a better place because I'm here.
Yeah.
And it can, what that brings up is it can surface in intellectualism or finances, like thinking you're better financially, thinking you're better intellectually, thinking you're better athletically, even though you may actually obviously better athletically, but there's pride about it.
Yep.
That's what disgusts people, man. There's nothing to me that I cannot stand to see a 16-year-old boy walking around bowed up like he's somebody, strutting like he's something big, just filled with pride. It's repulsive to the man,
But to get someone to that point, too, they've got to have been fed. Mm-hmm. Someone made you that proud.
Yeah.
I mean, you've always got pride in you, but the ones that are like, I'm unbeatable, I'm bad, and this, they've been fed that hey, you're the best out there.
Yeah.
Football players, you're the best player on that team.
Oh, it definitely. That's one reason I have said football can destroy a kid if they're not careful. Because if he's any good at all, he's suddenly one of the most popular kids in school, and they just praise him, and now all the girls want to date him, and his parents are now, taking him around for travel ball and all this kind of stuff. And then when he's 25, he's got such an arrogance problem, nobody can stand to be around him, and you find out why. Because he was a good high school football player, and it ruined him. The popularity, this local fame ruined him, man.
Well, you see those. Well, let's go to college level.
Oh, it gets worse.
You got Johnny
worse.
Football.
Yeah,
thought he was the best, and he fell. Stetson Bennett looks like he's headed the same direction. I mean,
it gets worse the further in life it goes. I just was even showing it all the way down.
I'm just gonna say, from what we can tell from Bryce Young, he was a humble person, and he was picked number 1 in the first round.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I didn't even know that. I hadn't
throwing
followed
that out
it.
there.
Who's
Roll
he going
Tide.
to?
Carolina Panthers.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Oh, that's going to be controversial, ain't it? Because
1, 3, and 4 were all Alabama.
Oh, really? So
Bryce
3 of the
Young,
top 4?
Richard. Dang, I'm drawing blank on the name. Richardson Jr. Is it Richardson?
I don't know, man. I hadn't thought about Alabama football.
I hadn't either since the season ended. But anyways, 1, 3, and 4 were the top 3. The first 4. Out of the first 4, 3 of them were Alabama. So
amazing. Yeah, and he's going to the Carolina Panthers. That's where Cam Newton went from Auburn. Whenever
and now there's 4 Alabama quarterbacks starting for 4 NFL teams. Just saying.
Yeah, hey, we're a good team. I'm proud of my team. Talking about pride, I'm proud of my team.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So, God hates pride because it ruins relationships. Proverbs 13:10 says, "By pride comes nothing but strife." Proverbs 16 through 19, I already read that. And there are 6 things the Lord hates. 7 are an abomination to him: a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift to running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren.
Mm-hmm.
What begins with pride ends with fighting amongst brothers.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to say, is the pride is in a list of some pretty rough stuff there.
Yes.
Pride's no small thing.
No.
Which we've already covered that, but
yeah.
Carry on.
All right. God hates pride because pride ruins your ability to fulfill the greatest commandment, to love God and love others. So let me back up and explain. Look carefully, and you will realize that every sin traces back to one or all of 3, what I'm calling self-activities, and that's self-reliance. If I have a problem, I don't need you or anyone else to help. I can take care of it myself. Self-centeredness. I will take from you to meet my wants and my needs. I am more important than you are. And then this one is tricky because it kind of disguises itself. Self-condemnation. I'd love to do things for God, but I'm not worth much. I can't do much. God's not interested in using me. That's a pride thing.
Mm-hmm. It's still, like I said, these are sneaky things because you just have to learn to really identify it. But pride will dress itself up as everything but pride. And the three things you was talking about there, that's interesting. I haven't thought that through. I'd have to think it through. But you said all the sins can be traced back to spawning out of like one of those three categories, basically. And that's interesting. I'm sure that you've thought through that,
from what I could think of from sins, I mean, obviously I don't have time to go through every single sin, but if you look, self-centeredness is a huge, self-reliance, they really are huge ones, because self-reliance can cause for one, we already talked about it. If you have I don't know if you have a brother. I have a brother. Say my brother came to me and was like, "Hey, I know you guys are moving this weekend. I don't mind helping. I'll get my truck, my trailer, and help you move. No, I'll try. I got this. I don't need your help."
Yeah, there's definitely a pride in that. There could be in that illustration. You may just try and be considerate of him, thinking, no, you got a full-time job, you don't have time. And so, in that sense, I would think, you was really just trying to be considerate of him. But if it's like, no, I don't need help, when really you probably could use it or whatever. Oh, yeah. But what I was thinking is the verse says, in all your ways acknowledge, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge God. Mm-hmm. That kind of was what it was making me think about, that self-reliance extends to the point of even confidence in your understanding being, supreme, or, and so, in that sense, this I can do it attitude, where it becomes prideful, that actually would span, you're right, he really fought really vast into a lot of different categories.
It really just, like I said, rabbit holes, man, everywhere. I mean, just follow a trail, and hours of you can read for hours and not touch every bit of it. I mean, you just can't. Mm-hmm. It's an understanding. We've already talked about this, the understanding. We will never completely understand God.
No.
The human mind will not grasp that.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with this. There may be reasons in here. There may be other reasons God hates pride that, aren't covered in here.
Mm-hmm. Or they're covered in such a way that you'd have to think on it and study it out for years and years to really see all the ways in which it manifests. One thing I just was sitting here thinking about is how to sum up my current view of pride, but it's like anything at all that in your own mind makes you better in any way, shape, form, or fashion than anybody on earth is pride. And then anything, these are your two categories really, but I'm wording them in a different way. Anything at all that takes away from the glory, and the praise, and the devotion, and attention, and leaning on God is pride. Anything that points to me, let me say it this way instead. Anything that is me pointing to me, is pride.
Yes.
Whether that be me intellectually, just in everything. It's abundant. It's the sin that dwells in the flesh.
Yep.
And then, as Paul said, when I seek to do good, evil is present with me. We could say this: when I seek to do good, pride is present with me. Pride is always with me.
Yep.
And this is interesting. This is what a lot of the Eastern religions have summed themselves up as. Their whole, like the heart of Buddhism, which is a dead-end religion, by the way, because there's no savior.
Yeah.
And the truth is, the only way to be saved from any of this is Jesus Christ. But they at least have the sense to see that pride is the destruction of man. And the whole heart of Buddhism is getting pride out of your life. Do you know that? I mean, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to transcend what they call ego.
Yep.
But ego is actually just pride.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. So it's interesting. All right, carry on.
So now we're going to jump back to fulfill the greatest command, to love God and love others. Now, can you imagine that if you are filled with self-reliance, self-centeredness, and self-condemnation, that you would have a difficult time fulfilling Matthew 22:37 through 40. For those of you, or I'm going to read it. I mean, I know you guys can look it up and read it yourselves, but I'll read it here.
Matthew 27, you said. Didn't you?
22, 37 through 40. I have it highlighted. When I get to it, I'll see it.
Well, that's 23:15.
It is, isn't it? I'm going to have to go to the eye doctor. I thought I had highlighted it.
What's the verse say? I thought you said
Matthew 22:37. Okay. Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophet." So if you have, let's get back on track. If you have self-reliance, self-centeredness, and self-condemnation, you're not going to be able to follow those two commandments.
I agree. Pride is what would stand in the way of that, because number one, you make yourself your own God through pride. You don't even realize you're doing it. And every time you trust in yourself, you're making yourself your own God.
Yep.
Anytime you even say within yourself, well, I don't think God would do this. Well, I don't think God would do that. What you really mean is to say, if I was God, I wouldn't do this. If I was God, I wouldn't do that. And because I'm so much, I'm so good and so this, God shouldn't do it. It's putting yourself in the seat of God. So pride stands in the way of those two. Yep. But it makes me think of what Jesus said when he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit."
Yep. That's
the non-prideful is kind of what he's getting at. The blessed are the non-prideful, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the meek. Again, that's the non-prideful, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the pure in heart. That's the non-prideful. Really, there's so much of the non-pride stuff that's blessed.
Yes.
What was you? I thought you was pointing there like he's about to read something.
No, I was just keeping my spot so I know where to start when we start.
Yeah. Well, what do you say about it? I mean, same thing, right? There's no way you can keep that commandment.
No, you can't. I mean, that's why I guess I should have highlighted. I thought I did. I've done. There's no telling. Yeah. Anyways, you can't. There's so many different ways to look at it. The way you were just looking at it. If you are self-reliant and someone offers to help you, and your pride can hurt their feelings because they may have actually taken the day off to help you out.
Mm-hmm.
That's you. It's hard to actually, because there's so many ways that these three things can keep you from being who you should be in God.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of pride. And now, and I hope with us talking, it's helped build you guys and help you realize how bad pride actually is. Because I was surprised reading this.
Yeah, the more I sit here and think about it, and I mean, we can go on, but it's like, well, exactly what you covered in the beginning, what you said and C.S. Lewis said is pride is at the root of every sin. I mean, because I'm sitting here thinking about, some people could just say, well, no, it's just he's stubborn. Well, stubbornness is the sin of pride. Like, unchecked pride is just, it does become stubborn. Oh, he's just old and set in his ways. It's pride. It's an unchecked, it's an unbridled pride that makes a man be that way to an extent. Like this, I was just thinking about, as people age and you're hardened by pride, so to speak, you won't listen to people anymore because you don't think that they have anything to say to you, like, or like even an older person. It could be young people too, but they just kind of shut out a younger person, or even perhaps an older man shutting out his wife. Because, like, you just think you know better, or you just think, well, they ain't got nothing to say worth listening to. Yep. We shouldn't even be talking. There's pride everywhere. Pride in thinking, well, like I said, in a marriage, when people are arguing or whatever, heaven is, half of the reason heaven is because there's no pride there.
Exactly.
And it's, everybody loves one another legitimately.
Yep.
They're not faking it, and there's not a pride war, and you put others first naturally because you do care more about them than yourself. And so earth, this world we live in, if we could just get pride out of it, we'd be halfway to living in a perfect world.
Yeah. Well, that's why they say that, or that's why the Bible says, if you love the things of this earth, the Lord is not in you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because that's another pride thing.
Yeah, materialism. Yeah, it's when you really think it through, at the end, you're like, no, okay, yeah, it's pride. There's a pride issue that's driving all of these behaviors of man in some shape, form, or fashion.
Yep.
Racism. It's a pride issue, man.
Yep.
Thinking that your race is somehow better than the other race, when really God says God made all man of one blood.
Yep.
Prejudices. Just feminism, even. That's a pride issue on the part of the women. Suddenly there's feminist movement, they thought, now they're proud, like they think they're better than the men. Well, it's just everywhere, man. I don't even know what else to say about it. It's just everywhere. But I'll let you keep on reading.
All right, so now I'm going to change course, because we've given good examples on pride. And as I said before, there's a lot. Just everybody's got Bible apps on their phones now. Look up pride. It will pull up every verse that has to do with pride directly or indirectly with pride. So it'll keep you reading for a long time. But we can't cover pride without covering the opposite of pride, or you could say the antidote to pride, and that's humility. So we're going to cover, I've got some examples of humility, and there was a lot, and I just picked out, again, the easiest ones I thought to get across. So humility is a good place to start. And humility would be a good place to start, would be read James 4. When I was reading, it said James 4:6, but if you just read all of James 4, it's not that long, it's like 17 verses. Just read James 4, and it really opens you up to humility. And like this one article I read, God is not out to hurt your pride, he's out to kill it. Because we don't need it. So humility has many faces. Humility is allowing our needs to be met in the context of others. I say that one was easy. I don't know, that one I really probably need to read on that one more. humility is washing somebody's feet, which is, they do that. That was in the Bible. We know that. And a lot of people will do that to show their, I know people that have done that to show their humility, but I don't know if it's a,
if you're doing it to show your humility, that's almost pride.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
When Jesus did it, it was the master washing the feet of the servant.
Yep.
That was something different. When the master washes the feet of a servant, there's almost, well, unless he humbles himself in the beginning, he won't do it no matter what.
Right.
He just ain't going to do it. He ain't going to be seen. I'm talking about a rich man, a master, or the master of the house or whatever, washing the feet of the servant. He wouldn't be caught dead doing that because it doesn't look good on him.
Yep.
But the greatest humility thing of all is that an all-powerful God put on flesh and became a man. That, I mean, really, that was a humility thing on God's part. Like, God demonstrated the opposite of pride there.
Yep.
And demonstrated true humility.
Yes.
It would almost be like you got a house full of rats, and to save the rats, you'll become a rat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, rather than just squash the rats. It's like, I can't imagine. Well, even and then the cross of Christ and is there was a humiliation factor there that he went through. Humiliation and humility go together. Humiliation is a humbling type of thing, and which he didn't need to be humbled. But all the things that he went through, even the Bible talks about, he humbled himself, being obedient unto death. Humbled himself to the Father.
And that you're talking James 4, right? Because I'm pretty sure that was James 4.
Probably. I don't know. I don't know where these.
I was gonna read it, but James 4. I mean, 17 verses when you're reading it, it'd take a little bit. But
yeah, okay.
I'm pretty sure that's where you're coming from is James 4.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not good at. Ever since I started using a digitized Bible, I forget where this stuff is located.
I'm trying to remember because, like I said, I've read so much scripture this week that what you're talking about, I know I've read, and I'm pretty sure it's James 4. Okay. Humility is receiving a compliment or a gift without trying to give it back. Humility is having a heart of service to meet the needs of others. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's actually what I had thought about preaching today.
Humility is love and comforting others. Were you wanting to say something?
No.
Okay. Humility is tenderness and compassion. And that's one of the things you were talking about, mothers. The tenderness and compassion. Mm-hmm. They do it. They don't even realize they're doing it. Humility is driving out selfish ambition and vain conceit. Humility is considering others better than yourself. That is.
Yeah. I like what you're saying. There's a couple of words I would want to add. Like humility is genuinely considering others better than yourself.
Right, yeah.
It's not just like saying, I'm going to try and treat it like, no, but I mean, it's genuinely considering that. And then like the tenderness and all that, I would say, what was it you said? Humility is
tenderness and compassion.
Yeah, I would say it's like blind tenderness and compassion. It's blind to its own self.
Right.
It doesn't premeditate, I'm going to do this. It just does it. And it does it blindly, too, without respect of persons to an extent. You know, humility sees a guy walking on the side of the road and says, pick him up. Pride says, I don't have the time. Because pride is like, well, my time is worth more than his life or his suffering. Yep. I'm not going to pick the guy up. I'm talking about men. Women probably shouldn't pick up a man on the side of the road. But if we pass a guy on the side of the road and we're like, it's inconvenient. That's a pride reason. Mm-hmm. But humility says, oh, man, that guy's probably had a rough day. I need to help him out. If I was walking, I'd want somebody to help me out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And probably the most important in this list, humility is following in the footsteps of Jesus. So I'm going to end with the allow God to kill your pride, look at Jesus and be humble. And Philippians 2, 5-8 is the verse to look up on that one.
I think this was good. I do think Well, I thought honestly we covered it pretty thoroughly. You really hit a lot of bases there. And it probably felt like we were repeating a lot of things, but it needs to be repeated. And if there's one thing I've learned through the years, it's like we don't absorb things the first time, or usually the second. It takes 3 or 4 times. And so what I just want to leave people with what I have already said, that first of all, we all have a pride problem.
Yep.
Second, pride will never see itself fully. So if you're sitting here listening to examples we've made, but you don't really feel like, well, maybe you're arguing in your mind a little bit, like, I don't think pride that, I don't think pride this. Well, it could be because you're seeing it through the lens of pride. It could be because you're just not looking at it right.
Yep.
If they're hearing the things that you're saying from the Bible and from the things that you've studied on and saying, well, that could be this and that could be, well, that's what pride does. Pride does exactly what Jesus said to those people that prayed in the streets and sat in the chief seats and wore the fancy clothing. He said, you are they which justify yourself.
Yep.
You justify yourself. You say, oh, no, it's because of this. No, it's because of that. No, it's because of this. And so my point is, some of this is a little hard to swallow, just to be honest with you.
It is.
But you got to swallow it.
Yep.
You can't argue against it and spit it out and be like, no, y'all are missing it, or because pride is a blinding force and it's something to be afraid of, honestly. And the other thing is this: it is sin, which means you can't, you're not afforded the right to tolerate it in your life.
Right.
You're not allowed by God to use it as an excuse of just, well, I'm just a man. And so here's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
So you're married. You love your wife. How much lust for another man would you allow her to have?
0.
Zilch.
Yeah.
I have a 0 tolerance policy. That's God and pride.
Yep.
Because in some way, shape, form, or fashion, pride is always taken away from something God deserves from us that we don't give him. And so pride is lust for one's self-glory, in a sense. And you cannot just say, it is what it is. I can't, no matter what I do, I'm always going to have some pride issues or whatever, and so I'm just not even going to try. You can't do it.
Right. Well, I read the title of this in the beginning, God hates pride. It's in the Bible. God hates pride. That's why it's dangerous.
Yeah, and I also think that the whole sodomite movement, they don't even know that, but they call it the pride movement. They have the gay pride month and all this. Pride. Well, anyway, man, I think you've done a great job on it. We might actually want to come back and cover lust.
Yeah. Well, I was actually thinking about that. There were some others.
Maybe just like cover a vast area of biblical things, good and bad. Like we could cover joy.
Yeah.
And joy and peace.
Yes.
What is peace and how to have true peace? The peace of God. And then, like I said, cover lust or covetousness that's in the 10 Commandments, or maybe just cover a lot of this stuff and bring them to life. I don't know. I'm just saying this is an idea, which I know that we're actually supposed to start the creation one pretty soon. By the way, teaser on that. We plan to do for Logos Life, we'll probably do 4 or 5 episodes on different amazing and interesting things about the creation that really help build your faith in the truth that God is the creator, not evolution.